Добрый день, уважаемые участники.
Good morning, good afternoon, distinguished participants. Welcome to our session on IPO transformational training, and I am working in the BCPT. I'm Eleonora, and I will be moderating today's session. Please remember that this is a very dynamic session. We have 5 speakers and our time is limited, and therefore there will be no Q&A session. However, you can send your questions via chat box. We will process these questions and give you feedback later on. We also have some English speakers during the session, and we have simultaneous interpretation available. Today, we will talk about the program on preparing the companies and their personnel to IPO. We'll talk about IPO stages. We'll talk about potential success factors for public offerings, and also we'll talk about the importance of professional development of employees of the company. Our speakers will talk about 9 directions of professional development for a successful IPO. Our first speaker is Assel Mukazhanova, Director of the Department of Market Development in Astana International Exchange. Assel will talk to us about Astana International Exchange, AIX products, ecosystem, and which is most important, she'll talk about the reasons for public offerings and the benefits from doing so. Assel, the floor is yours. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Eleonora, for presenting me, and I'll share my screen. Just give me a second. Assel, could you please... Well, we can see the presentation. No, that's not my presentation. What I need is to start my own presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So, my name is Assel Mukazhanova. Once again, I thank Eleonora for giving me the floor. I would like to thank the BCPT team for organizing this session and for giving the opportunity to share our experience in AIX listing. I represent AIX team working with the issuers, and our team works under one-stop shop principle, and we support our clients from when they come to us until the securities are officially included on the exchange. As you may know, AIX was created as part of Astana International Financial Center. It uses English law. We operate in separate regulatory requirements, and these activities of the AIX are regulated by Astana Financial Services Authority. In addition to AIFC, Goldman Sachs, Shanghai Stock Exchange, and Nasdaq, and are the shareholders in AIX. In AIX, right now, we have created the required infrastructure. We use modern exchange technologies provided to us by Nasdaq. We have trading members, custodian banks, and settlement banks as participants. Issue, listing, and trading on the exchange is possible in any currency. We have our own central depository and registrars, and AIX CSD has the account in Euroclear, in the Russian NKCD. In terms of the instruments available, it's quite standard with some peculiarities reflecting the needs of our clients. In terms of the topic of equity instruments in today's session, this could be listed as a basic instrument and also as depository receipts. And our main job is to listen to our clients and hear our clients, so we welcome any structures of the transactions, and so we are able to consider those with our clients to see whether they can be included in the official listing of AIX, and we are ready to create precedents to work together with businesses. To make a decision on whether to list or not to list, AIX offers the companies and organizers to look through the so-called control points, the audited financial statements. This is 1 year in REMS segment, which is regional equity market segment. So this is basically for mid-sized companies. And for the rest of the companies, the required track records for financial statements is 3 years, and at least 1 year should be profitable. There are requirements for audit companies. We certainly allow the Big Four plus the next 4 companies. And just before our session, I just got some information from my colleagues that the list of these further 4 companies was expanded and now includes 3 more companies. Plus, automatically, we accept the companies that are accredited in AIFC, and also when the audit company does not comply or doesn't fall into one of the above-mentioned categories, so we ask for a letter of confirmation about their compliance with AIX requirements, and these requirements include the indemnity insurance, experience in auditing under IFRS, and we also ask to give us confirmation that the auditors have the required international certifications. There are some requirements on free float, that's 15% for REMS companies and also 25% for other companies. The amount offered to the market should be at least $1 million, and there are requirements on compliance with the disclosure in prospectus. You can look it up on our website, aix.kz. It specifies all the detailed requirements to the contents of prospectus. And the next important requirement, in my opinion, is compliance with the corporate governance principles. So the company needs to have a board of directors, committees under the board of directors when required, and also independent directors. We don't have any requirements on the numbers in the board. If the company was incorporated under the legislation of Kazakhstan, then you need to comply with the requirements on joint stock companies in Kazakhstan. This also specifies that there should be a board of directors, committees, and at least 2/3 of the directors need to be independent, from what I remember. On the next slide, we try to demonstrate the main drivers and benefits of IPO. There are several reasons why companies want to become public. If the leadership of the company is confident in good prospects on the market for the company, then IPO could be more beneficial for the shareholders rather than just selling it to other companies. IPO allows the management to raise significant amounts of money, more than they would have received from private investors. And at the same time, it is important to remember that the valuation of the company will be higher because anyone can buy the stocks. In the classic scenario, investor can sell the shares or buy some more. In addition to the benefits and reasons, we should also mention about the consequences of an IPO for a company. So by obtaining the status of a public company, the company also gets some obligations. And one of these obligations is disclosing information about activities of the company. Public companies have to publish financial statements on a regular basis, demonstrating whether the company is successful or not in its activities. And this can have a significant impact on the price of shares. It can be quite difficult for a business to organize the process by themselves. Therefore, there is a need to engage a team of consultants. The organizers or the book runners, the investment banks, they do the day-to-day management of the project. They recommend the structure of the transaction, and also they conduct routine coordination of IPO process. The role of legal consultants is important. They provide legal support throughout the process. including structuring of the transaction, some legal aspects, which is very important, and they also assist in drafting the prospectus. Some consultants are hired only for the project itself. So you see these are the one-off consultants, and with some of the consultants, the company continues to work in the future. As an example, these are the insurance companies. So in the case of POSI, public offering of securities insurance, this kind of insurance is bought once. It's valid for 5 or 6 years. So this will be a one-off expense. But the second type of insurance is directors and officers insurance. This is a type of insurance that is renewed every year, and it's aimed at ensuring that there is no regression to personal assets of the directors when they act as officers of the company. On the next slide, we are giving you an indicative time frame. I will not go into details, but it's important to mention that there are 4 main stages. This is the pre-IPO, the preparation stage, main stage, and the completion stage. From the standpoint of interactions with AIX, we invite the companies to contact us as early as possible in the process, and the deadline for submission of the final draft of the prospectus is 4 weeks before the IPO. With that, I will finish my presentation. We are open to your questions. We provide guidance to the companies. We are ready to answer your online or offline questions, and our contact details are on the slide. Thank you. Thank you, Assel, for the presentation. I remind everyone that if you have any questions, you can send them through the chat. After the session, we will get back to your questions. And with that, let us continue. IPO Transformative Learning Programme was developed by the Bureau for Continuous Professional Development of AIFC. During the presentation, Assel mentioned the second and third stage of IPO, that is submission of the document and market offer and closing the transaction. But today we'll talk about the first stage. Primarily, that is preparation of the company to going public. This is planning and capacity building and professional development of the employees. When the company is only thinking about an IPO, they need to start thinking what happens after a successful IPO, and they need to understand what it truly means to be a public company. Therefore, a preparation process should start by analyzing what will be required of the company once it becomes public. Based on that, we develop our program for transformation training, and experts identify 6 key factors, which you can see on the screen. These factors can potentially affect the success of public offering. And as you can see, 4 out of 6 factors imply the availability of highly qualified staff and high quality human capital, which could directly impact the performance of the company. Professional development of staff is very important for sustainable development of the company. Not only it will improve the level of expertise of the company, but it will also guarantee that the personnel has the knowledge necessary to comply with the new expectations, rules, and standards. Investments into professional development of staff will accelerate implementation of changes, build a new culture, and the ways of thinking for a new stage of development. And they will further assist in transformational learning. In this process, it is important to identify which functional leadership skills and abilities your personnel needs, and which strategy of training will be suitable for your company. And training can be an important factor in successful transition to the new level of development of the company. For those companies that plan listing, it is important to support the professional development and training culture on all levels, because this is one of the factors that external investors pay attention to. The coverage and effectiveness and efficiency of training will directly impact the productivity, sales, relations with the main stakeholders, and many other factors that could affect the net income of the company and its position on the market. One of the cases of successful IPOs is an example of Mastercard. During preparation to IPO, Mastercard leadership has offered several training programs for employees on various levels. The programs covered basic financial literacy all the way up to knowledge of the payment systems. And as one of the initiatives of Mastercard, together with the IMD Business School, there was a program on professional development for 200 top managers of the company. And this program was aimed at identifying what the leadership will look like during and after successful IPO. And all employees of Mastercard participated in a roadmap into the future program, which included various training programs, structured and interactive classes. When building a training strategy and professional development strategy, it is important to take into account different criteria. Among them, relevance of the knowledge and skills, ethical and professional standards. The best approach to training of specialists of different disciplines are the professional certifications. And in CIS countries, the practice of professional certification is being developed, and thousands of specialists confirm their professional skills and knowledge throughout the world. And an international certificate could confirm competence of the employee, and professionals of international level can bring the best standards and practices to the companies, and they can improve competitiveness of the company on the market. Professional development of staff can be built in various ways, depending on the needs and the abilities of the company. After identifying the general trajectory for development and preparation of the employees for changes, it is recommended to start training under targeted programs to resolve specific business objectives that could appear during and after IPO. Based on the analysis, we have identified 9 key dimensions that require special attention when preparing the company for public offering. Let me now invite the following speaker of the session, Assel, Director for Regional Development and Supervisor for the Bureau of the BCPTs. She will talk about 4 key dimensions: financial management, internal audit, investment management, and also risk management. Assel has an international certificate, ERP firm, and as a candidate of CFA Level 2. Assel, please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Eleonora, for giving me the floor. Let us start with financial management. The company that wants to become public needs to have an audited financial statements, which will directly impact the investment assessment of the company. However, the matters of accounting and financial statements are just the tip of the iceberg. A more important and more complex task is to analyze the main functions and identify which areas will require creation or expansion of the company to become public. The relevant officials need to assess their organization to make sure that the existing structure satisfies the needs of the stakeholders, such as investor, regulators, and creditors. And these needs are, first of all, higher expectations of transparency and reliability of data. Second, a more thorough approach to analyzing the budget and forecast, and also requirements for accelerated submission of documents. Therefore, it is very important to have highly qualified staff in the company which have strong technical skills for the purposes of planning, decision-making, performance assessment, and control. One of good programs is ACCA, International Certification. Qualification elements of ACCA can confirm the knowledge and skills required for managing financial statements in the companies. Let us now look at internal audit. The internal audit system in many companies who prepare for an IPO could already be in place, but sometimes it's not sufficiently formalized or reliable to comply with the new requirements. So therefore, the companies preparing for an IPO need to strengthen their internal audit functions by paying priority attention to the people, processes and technologies, which will be most important for managing the phases of IPO. To do that, it is important to create an effective internal audit service, which will become an instrument for complying with the regulatory requirements and assessing the control environment of a public company. The internal audit processes become vital factors of sustainable growth by giving the companies instruments to meet the expectations of the stakeholders and to improve risk management and operational efficiency. And in this dimension, the foundation for transformational learning was the Certified Internal Auditor certification, which was developed by the Institute of Internal Auditors in the US. This qualification includes international professional standards for internal audit, conducting audit assignments, information technologies, and skills in business management, which will be useful for public companies. In terms of the investment dimension, which is the next block, I would like to mention that when considering an IPO, often main attention is paid to the process of actually issuing the shares and the key decisions in this process. Usually, the companies also will need to take into account the opportunity to access debt markets to fund their current needs, growth, or support potential acquisition of assets. Therefore, the companies need to take into account overall financing strategy, including the target structure of the capital and also their strategy of payments to potential shareholders, such as dividend policy or the stock repurchasing programs. Also, from the standpoint of the treasury functions for newly public companies, there are increased expectations in terms of control, effectiveness, and efficiency of the treasury operations. Therefore, when planning an IPO, many companies do comprehensive assessment of the treasury functions to change their practices to meet these increased expectations. These assessment could lead to changes in the model of the treasury, their authorities or powers, and also to improve professional development and skills of the team. To bring the team up to an international level, we have the CFA certification, which is a golden standard in the finance and investment world. This will help in mastering the advanced methods of investment analysis and portfolio management skills. And the last part of my presentation covers risk management. Successful companies understand the importance of proper risk management, and economic crisis just confirm this truth. Global shocks in the last decades have urged the investors, regulating bodies and other stakeholders to pay more attention to how effectively public companies can manage their risks. Stakeholders want to be sure that the company understands the risks they're facing and can manage those risks effectively. There is also transparency required. Stakeholders need to see preparedness of the leadership to lead an open dialogue on risk management in the company and about what they are doing to improve the processes. Therefore, improving the risk management quality has become a strategic priority. Even those who work well in this dimension take additional steps to improve their systems and processes. In order to bring this in compliance with the best international practices in risk management during transformation learning, we have selected a financial risk manager certification, which is an international standard in the area of risk management. This is in demand by almost all large public companies in the world, and it's only given to those professionals who demonstrate their knowledge and abilities to forecast, respond, and adapt to critical risks. With that, I finish my part of the presentation. Thank you very much. Eleonora, back to you.
For your presentation of the first 4 blocks. The next area is the corporate governance area, and I would like to give the floor to Professor Alexander van der Putte, the Director of Strategic Studies, the Chairperson of the Academic Council, and Chairperson of the Corporate Governance of the AIFC. Alexander is also the Professor of the Business Forecasting.
Eleonora, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So I have 3 slides. First of all, the principal tenets of corporate governance. Number 2 is how companies can actually prepare from a corporate governance perspective for an IPO, and then also what we're doing at the AIFC and through the BCPD in terms of corporate governance training. So let me first talk about the principal tenets of corporate governance. There are actually 3, and those principal tenets are universal around the world, at least in the US, United Kingdom, and also any Commonwealth nation. First of all is probity or honesty. And that means basically not to act in one's own interest. When I chair the board meeting of the BCPD, at the start I always ask, are there any conflicts of interest to be disclosed? And the reason why I ask that, because if that would be the case, then either I would ask the director not to be involved in the discussion, or even to temporarily leave the board meeting, because it would be very difficult to act in the best interest of the company. Number 2 is accountability. And the question is, accountability to whom? Let me already tell you, it's not accountability to the shareholder. It's accountability to the company. In any corporate governance code around the world, it clearly indicates that directors and the board needs to act in the sustainable long-term interest of the company. So it's not about the shareholders, it's about the long-term interest of the company. Number 3 is transparency. And in transparency, it's about disclosure requirements. And the disclosure requirements are actually dynamically changing because of what was referred to Assel Mussagul before. There are risks in the external environment, including global climate change, cybersecurity, and others. And for example, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, requires mandatory disclosure on material ESG issues, environmental, social, and governance issues. And why is that? Because they want to ensure that a company internalizes externalities and therefore ensures, well, you cannot ensure, but basically you contribute to the sustainable long-term success of the company. So therefore, on the next slide, when you prepare for an IPO, you have to take corporate governance extremely seriously, because you're going to have disclosure requirements. You're also going to have requirements, depending on the jurisdiction, about independent directors. What does independence mean? There are 2 aspects of independence. First of all, it's being independent in terms of both character and judgment. That's number 1. Number 2 is a requirement that one does not have a prior relationship with the company in terms of employment, but also potentially as a supplier or customer. In other words, it's important that there is a true independence from a director requirement. In addition, and again, depending on the jurisdiction, there may be requirements in order to establish committees. For large listed companies, it would typically require to have 3 committees: an audit committee, a nomination committee, and also a remuneration committee. And these committees have to be composed of solely independent non-executive directors. In fact, for the audit committee, it also requires that those directors have relevant financial experience, recent and relevant financial experience. So when do you have to start preparing for your board in order to be more independent, more professional, more diverse, including age diversity? It is probably in excess of 1 year. This is not something that should be taken lightly and requires forward-looking preparation, proactive preparation, as opposed to being reactive. On the next slide, it's about training. I mentioned I was going to talk about training. In a 2017 study by the EBRD, it assessed corporate governance in Kazakhstan on a scale from 0 to 10 at 4.7. So what were the reasons of this, let's say, shortcoming in corporate governance? Several things. First of all, lack of independent directors on companies. That's number one. Number two is not requiring narrative reporting as opposed to just financial reporting. So that has to do with the disclosure, the transparency requirements of good corporate governance. Number three is that very often, and I've been in Kazakhstan for the past 15 years, I've been serving on many boards, public, well, not many public, actually, most of them are actually either family businesses or universities or also national entities. Directors don't show up. How can you assume your duties if a director doesn't show up on a board meeting, or a director does not prepare actually for the board meeting? We have signed agreement through the BCPD with one of the foremost institutes about corporate governance. We looked at several bodies, including the National Association of Corporate Directors in the US, the Institute of Directors, but also the Chartered Governance Institute in the UK, and also active in the Commonwealth. We wanted to find the right balance on the one hand between quality and affordability. I'm a fellow with all these three, and the only one that is truly affordable is actually the Chartered Governance Institute in the United Kingdom. We will start this year in August with training, and the first module we will deliver. There's 7 modules in total. And that model is focused on corporate governance. And in September, we will look at risk management. Again, Assel referred to risk management. Risk management is something that is very important. It's not just backward-looking risk that's typically covered through the audit committee. It's also forward-looking risk. And if you look at Dodd-Frank in the United States, but also the Walker Report in the United Kingdom, the recommendation is to have separate risk committees as opposed to having just the audit committee that deals with risk. Why do we need that? Because indeed we need to look much more at forward-looking risk, the cost of global climate change, cybersecurity, as already mentioned before. Just for reference, cybersecurity, the cost of it is currently estimated at $6 trillion. If it would be a country, the cost would be equivalent to the 3rd biggest country in the world. In terms of global climate change, it is currently the 2nd biggest country in the world if it would be an economy, $16 trillion. That brings me basically to my last point. And my last point is that we need to move away from the tyranny of pure focus on compliance. Corporate governance is moving away from the pure focus on compliance, and that has to do with the responsibility of company directors to focus on the sustainable long-term success. That basically means there needs to be a focus on performance. Later on today, we have a panel, is Corporate Governance 4.0 emerging? We have some of the foremost experts on our panel, including the former Chief Justice of the South African Supreme Court, who is also the person behind King 1, 2, 3, and 4 codes, and his name is Mervyn King. And he will argue what we need is outcomes-based corporate governance that focus on sustainability, inclusiveness, and resilience. And this is what we aim to do with the Chartered Governance certification that we're rolling out starting this year. Back to you, Eleonora. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Благодарим вас за презентацию блока по корпоративному управлению и сертификации данной.
For issues for your discussion of the certification on the corporate governance. The next area is the human resource management. The processes and management are the important areas of the successful IPO. This study carried out by Dr. Teresa Belburn that if the company has the chief executive director on HR, it would have a positive influence on the productivity of the company planning IPO. The research also showed that the higher is the speed of changes, the more important the HR factors are. To enhance qualification in this regard, the most important and the most relevant is the HR certification by the HR Certification Institute, which ICR is developing and proposed the training of the world level. Also, administration of global certificates strive to help professionals to achieve new competences to achieve the business result. Based on the future university, we are issuing 2 certificates: professional in human resources international and senior professional in human resources international CHRI and CHRI. The CHRI certification is issued for the managers who cover all the areas of HR management and business processes of the companies. Another important area that we have presented today is the project management. IPO is a complex process for any institution that can influence all the functionalities inside the companies. The preparation can be lengthy depending on maturity of the company, its business model, and the existing HR processes and project management is one of the success factors. For the efficient project management, you need to have good project managers and strong leadership can be ensured by introduction of the project office in the company with the relevant authority for decision-taking delegated at each level of the organization. One of the recognized professional certifications in project management is the project management profession by PMI. The university provides the certification in project management trains too. Another area is the legal regulation and compliance that will be presented by David Russell Gallo, who manages the operations of the Academy of Rights related to the AIFC and certification activities for business community.
Thank you very much, Eleonora, and welcome everyone. Thanks for your time today. I would just like to talk very briefly about the Academy of Law's interest and activities relative to providing education as well as sharing knowledge about AIX listings in particular relative to both the issuance of an IPO, the process around that, and then operating a publicly held company. So with that, I think everyone is aware that the securities issuance and securities exchange area is highly legal intensive. So the Academy has developed an AIFC certificate in IPO that focuses on 7 key subject areas where there is a special amount of legal substance that we like to cover. So we have been working with a few large companies as well as government organizations who are looking to potentially engage in an IPO. And then we also are generally offering fundamentally the same program to the general public in the certificate program. So the certificate aims to cover the life cycle of an IPO and key considerations for a company contemplating listing. By engaging international experienced lawyers and corporate finance specialists on this subject, it provides practical tips to each and every stage and ideally helps guide companies to succeed in an IPO. Now, here are the 7 topics we've identified. There's no magic to this, but we thought that these are the broad categories that need to be covered. For now, we have developed a 7-hour version of this certificate. So it's 1 lecture hour per subject. Now, in fairness, each subject probably deserves about 30 lecture hours, but we can kind of take the same framework and offer variations on a theme as the market opportunities require. So just very briefly, you can see the subjects we've identified. Transition to the AIFC. Okay, so the AIFC is a relatively new platform. It has listing rules that are based on international standards. To some extent, the London Stock Exchange principles and procedures are relevant. So a focus of the education program would be to maybe encourage companies or let them know about the benefits of potentially using the AIFC AIX platform, and to discuss how those may differ and be similar to the national stock exchange rules. AIX listing rules. Assel already covered a lot of this, but obviously there's a lot of importance in focusing on what are those listing requirements, what are the rules, and then move into kind of a comparative analysis about other exchanges. In particular, we like to talk about London, the London Stock Exchange, and the potential for dual listing. Remember, when a company is doing an IPO, they're trying to raise capital. It's a corporate finance tool, and they really want to optimize the value of that listing. And it's important that there's proper and appropriate marketing done around that. But one consideration would be potentially dual listing the shares on London as well as in the AIX, because obviously you have a globally known platform in London, and that may well expand materially your potential investor base. Primary and secondary listings, you won't get into details, but basically there are initial public offerings, and then there could be later offerings or secondary offerings where various series of stock, preferred stock with different rights and so forth could be listed. So those are things that all need to be analyzed in the strategy planning. Underwriting and valuation, this is very much a financial exercise, but it's also a leadership and strategic forecasting exercise. So this is where various financial ratios will be looked at in putting together the offering statements, things like obviously revenues, profitability, debt equity ratios, price earnings ratios, earnings per share, and so forth. And in addition to that, the business plan, the management, the growth prospects, these are all things that play into valuation of the IPO. Investor relations, very important. You have to get the word out there, and disclosures need to be made in an appropriate way that's in compliance with laws. And finally, compliance. This is really more of a post-IPO discussion, and that is, once you're listed, what are some of the disclosure and reporting requirements that you may have as a listed company? So I think I'm out of time. It's a big topic and a short time to cover it, but we would look forward to hopefully welcoming some of you to our certificate in IPO listings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Уважаемые участники, представляю...
Distinguished participants, I would like to introduce our last but not least area, which is leadership development and development of leadership skills. That will be presented by Lise Bruynooghe. She's the founder of the School of Change and co-founder of Board Change, and she's also the professional coach of ICF and lecturer of Technical University in India on design thinking, new methods of working, and experience of working in crisis.
Спасибо большое, Eleonora. Добрый день. Я хотела попробовать на
Thank you very much, Eleonora. I would like to try to do it in Russian, and I hope that it will work for you. I was asked to briefly speak about leadership skills and qualities that are required for successful IPO. That is, the IPO is not an easy task. You have to take into account a number of elements, such as business plan, equity, taxes, and so on. Therefore, quite often people forget that figures is only a part of the history, especially nowadays. The investors will very carefully study the wide range of issues such as culture of the company, diversity, inclusiveness, and also your expertise and experience in environmental and social sustainability. Communications, strategic and personal leadership is the key to the success of the IPO. During IPO, public is not only the company that becomes public, but the entire managerial team becomes public. In particular, the chairperson of the board, chief CEO, and the CFO. The interests of the company and behavior of the leadership will attain a new measurement from the point of view of public interests. Let's look first at the communication. In the area of social media, social networks, the information is distributed much quicker and broader. A good example is the use of Twitter for commenting. The task is to build the communication in such a way that the information is provided is correctly interpreted to avoid bad releases and avoid consequences for the humans and the company. Success is to communicate efficiently and timely. This brings us to the strategic leadership. IPO raises new dilemmas, in particular the contradiction between the short-term and long-term prospects. Quite often the leaders become the subject where a lot of expectations would be projected both inside the company and outside. Outside the company, investors would expect a solid financial return. Inside the company, the loyalty to culture and values play an important role in maintaining and attracting talent. Strategic leadership is necessary, in particular, to deal with such contradictions on a daily basis. Finally, personal leadership. At the moment, the corporate and reporting is aimed to enhance interests and expectations to the behavior of certain leaders in personal respect. The CEO, in particular, needs to clearly understand the expectations of public, irrespective of whether it's operation related to business or its personal life, and to what extent this could be justifiable or not. The CEO should serve as an example both inside the company and in public. How they can deal with that? For example, Joe Kaiser, the CEO of Siemens in Germany, actively shares his personal view on public problems in Twitter, and 90% of his staff approve of his actions. The studies of 2018 demonstrated the statistically a significant correlation between the charismatic leadership and the return of IPO from the first day of listing. However, the charismatic leadership, though charismatic leadership has its advantages, the investors are mostly interested in the capability of the companies to survive the difficulties. As is shown in this slide, Saddam Neumann, CEO of Good Work Investments, decided otherwise. As a result, he had postponed IPO that they planned. On the other hand, a good example is Apple, who managed to survive the charismatic Steve Jobs with the current CEO, Tim Cook. The last thing that I would like to share with you at the moment is the time frames. The IPO process may last much longer than it may seem. Both before and after IPO is of paramount importance. There is the temptation to relax when the company is listed. However, at this particular moment, the most work starts from the point of view of strategic leadership, personal leadership, and communications. Thank you very much.
Лиз, благодарим вас за освещение столь важного направления, как лидерство.
Please, thank you very much for covering such an important area of leadership, which we consider to be another important area of IPO. That's all from our side. Let us summarize. We presented to you the concept of transformation training and preparation for IPO developed by the Lifelong Professional Development Bureau. Based on the University of the Future, we started the digital solution for professional development. University of the Future, which was previously the training center that trained more than 5,000 specialists using the international standards. We supported the professional communities such as the EMI Charter of Kazakhstan and GARP Charter of Kazakhstan with all the state institutions and associations. During these 3 years, we have been collaborating development of certification programs both inside Kazakhstan and outside the country. For more than 3 years, we have been the local partner and the lead platform for online training, Coursera, that supports us in all the training operations. And during pandemic, we established a digital platform that is used to establish the online corporate universities, design digital courses and analysis. We have put together a lot of professional trainers and business practitioners. During 5 years, we have been trusted by the lead professionals and we developed together with them. You should also trust the development of your company to us. Thanks a lot. That's all from our session. You can see our contact details. Should you have any questions, please contact the telephone number and email address. Thanks a lot to all the speakers that we had today with us. Thanks to all of you for your participation. See you soon.